Hi, everyone. Welcome to a counseling skills class mini lecture. I'm Dr. Allen, and today we are going to talk about the skill reflection of meaning. The reflection of meaning. Why do we use it? We have to show a client that you hear and understand the deeper meaning of what they're experiencing. It really digs deeper. It gives insight into the client's behavior, values, and beliefs. And we do it by sharing the stated or unstated core meaning that a client communicates through their time with you. Now, in order to use this skill, the therapeutic relationship must be established. It's developed through understanding of the client. So you need to really understand the content and feelings that the client's been experiencing. You comprehend the situation and develop an awareness of a client's belief and values. So this skill really digs deep down into the core of those layers of the presenting issue. It's not typically something that you could do in that first session, at least not easily. It takes a lot of time and understanding and really being able to know some of the backstory of what the client's experience and how that influences how they see what's in front of them. Now, how do we get there? You want to use invitational skills, paraphrasing, and reflections of feelings to help the meanings emerge. Again, it takes some time. Sometimes you can even use open-ended questions to get to the meaning, asking them about what things mean to you or how their experience influenced what they have seen or feel. And generally, you use the educational guesses, intuition, that clinical insight to explore, to think about why the story is important to the client. And you're exploring that with them, just like those divers under caves. You don't know what's down there until you go take a look. Now, schemas is meaning. So our experiences and situations influence how we view an event. We view them through our own lenses of understanding, impacted by our emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and even bodily sensations. And these are influenced by our past, and more specifically, how did we interpret our past experiences? So our bodily state influence them through those body sensations as well. So I'm going to view a situation much differently if I'm hungry and tired than if I'm not, right? Hanger's a real thing, and it influences how we see something that happens. So it's really important as a counselor that we are able to understand some of these schemas that our client has to be able to see the world with their lenses on, not just our own, because it could be completely different. We can look at one event and see something completely different than our client does. We have a different meaning of it than they do. So here's a poignant example of this that I thought of recently. And it really relates to that quote from your book. It's not what happens to us, but what we make of it. Now, these are some books about the same core event, a death of a mother, but they're different responses because they're from different authors with different life experiences, relationships, and lenses. So for some, like this first book on how to lose your mother, she turned that grief into something instructional, kind of memorializing her mother and her relationship. Whereas with Memorial Drive, this book, with the death of her mother and the ensuing trauma, it was about finding agency after tragedy. With the book Pieces of My Mother, she got letters from her mom after she left her when she was young and as she was on her deathbed. And that book is about just the grief of the situation and then her coming to an understanding of why her mother did what she did. And overall and ultimately, it's an uplifting story. Whereas with Jeanette McCurdy, she, in her book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, a very poignant title, that book's all about relief from her relationship with her mother. So as you can see, same core event, different lenses, different responses. And what that means for us as counselors is that we can't assume that because something happens, we know how the client is going to respond, right? Our automatic thought might be if their mother dies, that oh my goodness, so you're grieving, it's a tragedy. But in reality, it might not be. It might be a source of freedom for them. So that's why we need to peel back the layers to better understand what's going on. Now, some clues that your client is talking about meaning, if they're exploring creativity, so our careers, our jobs have meaning. We find meaning in volunteer work or involvement with faith, political and social causes. Those all speak to some deeper values we might have. If we're talking about our experience, our family, children, loved ones, the sunset, gardening, beaches, museums, or even playing with pets. It could also be about our attitude, achieving in an education despite personal challenges, or living with a loss, or persevering through cancer treatment. And then finally, our history really is deep with meaning. That's if our client is talking about their story, family history, history of their name, accomplishments, and whatever brings hope. Uh, and so these are things that we're seeking out. We have our counseling ears, our rabbit ears on to pay attention when we hear some of these in session. Another tool that I like to use for helping me conceptualize a client's meaning in a situation is this tool on hidden issues from PrEP's Big 10. PrEP is a relationship education program called Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program, and they teach communication skills to couples. Now, this is a tool that explains essentially deeper meaning and how that impacts a relationship. It's the idea that an event occurs, like a geyser going off, and it's not necessarily what happens in that moment that caused the geyser to shoot water out of the ground. It's actually all these other little caveats and uh, layers beneath the earth that have been heating up over time that eventually combust into that explosive event. And so you look at the event, but then in the next layer are issues. So things like jealousy, money, communication. Now, those all stem from something even deeper, like the core values of caring, control, power, respect, commitment, trust, recognition, right? We want to look at some of those and what our client might be experiencing in that moment or really value. So, an example is once I witnessed a dad just explode at his child because they dropped a fork on the ground. Right? That was the event, just dropping a fork on the ground. It makes no sense why that would have such an explosive response. But peeling back the layers, it was looking at some of these other things kind of related to his children, relationship with his children was not good. And then when that dug even deeper, it related to recognition and respect, just feeling consistently disrespected by his children and wife and not feeling recognized for the things that he did. And so when that fork fell, it was a visual representation of the lack of respect and care that his daughter had for him in that moment, leading to that explosion. So much deeper, much more complex than just not getting mad. Okay. So how do we use this skill? You're going to find ways to do it over time that really resonate and reflect with your own communication pattern. But for now, as you're learning this skill, we recommend a formula like this. It's like the feelings formula, except now you add in meaning. So you might say something, you feel blank because blank, with those first blank being feeling and the second blank being meaning. You can also add some context in there, like a paraphrase. So you feel, insert feeling word, when, insert context, because, meaning. And so that because connects the feeling with the meaning. You're showing that causality there. So an example might be you feel hurt when your friends don't invite you because you believe that you are not accepted. You're not part of the group. Oof, right? Another one could be you feel afraid when your partner drinks because you're not sure you can trust him to stay safe. So you can see how just using that really peels back those layers and getting to understanding why they have that feeling or why they have a response to a situation. So speaking of layers, right? Good old Shrek. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. We've all got layers, not just ogres. So like I mentioned, you're going to find your own ways to reflect meaning that feels authentic to you. Try using that formula, but here are some other ways that you can reflect it, some other stems you can use. It might be, it meant a lot to you that blank, blank, blank. It's really important that to you that it seems like X is really meaningful to you. I wonder if X gives you a sense of mission, purpose, or fulfillment. It sounds like X is something you value deeply. Being a person who blank X seems really important to you. And there's so much more. So try what feels natural to you. So these communicators, you value, you care, your reasons are, your intention was. Right? We're going. So some quick tips. Be patient. Listen long enough to understand the meaning. This isn't something to jump into as soon as that little flag goes off in your head. Take note of it if you notice it. Let some more things happen. Pay attention. Reflect. Paraphrase. See if there's more things that stay consistent with that flag of a meaning. And then when the time is right, when you're quite sure about it, or when posing it will be beneficial to the session, and drop that reflection of meaning. You want to think about and tie in the client's background and experiences to better understand. And then you want to use open-ended questions, minimal encouragers, reflection of feeling, and then reflection of meaning. Again, you're taking your time to get there. You want to listen and use keywords. So some words might be value or intend, but try to use the client's own terms. Then you can connect the dots of the story to get to deeper meaning. Attend to your intuition and follow your hunches. You're here for a reason. You have some sort of innate ability to understand people. Start honing in that clinical ability and pay attention to your hunches. Again, when those flags go off, notice them. And then embrace the gray and fog. Be willing to go there. So one of the big questions I get from counseling students is, what is the difference between reflection of feeling and reflection of meaning? I don't get it. Well, this is really watered down, but at the core of it, feelings are temporary. They do not last forever. In fact, sometimes they only last a few seconds. However, meanings and values are persistent. They are longer lasting. I can use the same reflection of meaning on a client every single session, and it will still be true. But I cannot always use the same reflection of meaning in the here and now on a client and it be true every single session. That's the difference. So how do you choose what skill to use? You now have several in your toolbox, and each one does something different. As I've talked about in the past, working with your client is like walking down a beautiful trail. As you're noticing things, you're starting to build that data. And when you get to that fork in the road, now there's more than just two paths. You have several. So what do you choose? It's all about what you want to do or what you want to happen in a session and what feels right. So if you want to keep listening to the client's story until you understand it better, you might use those invitational skills and opening skills, paraphrases, open-ended questions, and encouragers. Those will keep you moving. If you want to find out critical or crucial information that's very specific, you're going to use a close-ended question. To move the client to deeper exploration of a topic, that's when you're going to dive deeper with that reflection of feeling or meaning. And then if you're ready to transition to a new topic, you might use either a summary or a question. Now, Jung has this nice helpful cycle for understanding how to and when to use some of our skills. It's just a guideline, but it's a nice way to visualize a session. You start with an open-ended question, and then use some skills like minimal encouragers to keep the conversation going, a door opener to dig deeper into something specific or to kind of keep the session on track, and paraphrase and reflect some more feeling, and by then you should have enough data to be able to reflect some meaning, summarize, and wrap it up. So Not something you have to follow exactly. I'm not going to be counting how many minimal encouragers or paraphrases you use before you reflect meaning, but it's just a helpful visualization in recognizing that in order to get to that reflection of meaning and summary, you need to use all those other skills to get yourself there first. And they don't need to be question, 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 question. In fact, I don't think there's not really even an open question on here besides the beginning. So just keep that in mind. Well, that's it for Reflection of Meaning. If you have any questions, go ahead and email me, Dr. Allen, at lkallen@su.edu. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.